Good. Good. Thanks all for showing up. Just a super short introduction. The session today is basically, I do the same as I would do with Lilith anyway as a CTA coach. So it's very similar. The only difference is I would be super happy that you are basically the fact checkers for us. So when I say something stupid, please write it into the chat. Yeah, actually, that's it, because Lilith doesn't say anything stupid. So it's kind of, it's me. So, and sometimes I will just literally ask you, this is what we did in the past, to actually fact check. You know, we always don't know all the answers. If you have other ideas, please also let us know in the chat. And that's it so far. Lilith, anything from your side?
No, I will say some dumb stuff too, but as a CTA aspirant or candidate, what I should actually do in those cases is just ask the question if I don't know. But yeah, we don't always do that now, do we?
No. Okay, this is a good start. So Lilith, you know the exercise? Lilith, what's my favorite? Right. Okay, 5 seconds. Good. Lilith, what's my favorite food?
I'm assuming bratwurst.
Come on.
No.
Maybe to the group a little bit why I do this exercise at the beginning. Lilith has no way of actually knowing what's my favorite food. So she should just pass the question. So Lilith, what's my favorite food?
Pass.
What do we do? Okay, slightly different. Go back. 1, 2, I don't know.
Yeah, of course, I have to think about it. And I think also I should be a bit more polite and professional than just say pass. Exactly. So let me try again.
Lilith, what's my favorite food?
I think I have to pass this question.
Okay. Now, come on. We have been talking about food for often enough in the past. Can you not think of anything, Lilith?
Yeah, I can think of a few alternatives, but from the scenario, I'm not very comfortable making this assumption, so I really should pass.
My personal opinion here is you just wasted 30 seconds without adding any value. Maybe just stick with the I don't know.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
It's not your time to shine with your sentences. It's your time to just get as many points as possible. Get as many correct answers.
Every second counts.
And every second counts. Going back, setting the stage. Who am I? I'm Johan, but the role I play as CTA, I'm not a CTA judge, but this is how I imagine it. You know what I mean? I'm a CTO. I task Lilith with the biggest digital transformation project this company has ever seen. This project determines the make or break of this company. Maybe not make or break, but this is the biggest transformation this company ever had. I'm 45 years old, and my main motivation is fear. I fear that this project is going to fail. This is a product Salesforce I don't really know that well. It's multi-million, many years, a lot of unknowns. Your job as a CTA, as an architect, is to instill trust in you. Maybe I can bring Gaurav in here. He has been around management for a long time. Is this a correct assumption I'm making?
It's a very contextual assumption, but yes, yeah, by and large, it's fine to make that assumption.
So, Lilith, whatever you can do to make me feel comfortable, it's very well. It's great. Whatever makes me uncomfortable and not trust you makes me nervous. Don't make me nervous. What do you think?
I'll do my best.
Yes. So, coming back again, Lilith, what's my favorite food?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I need to pass.
Thank you. Perfect. One more time, just to make it sit. Lilith, what's my favorite food?
I need to pass.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Lilith, now we do the basic exercise. You know it already, most of you, the 5-finger method. You know, Lilith, we would like to collect leads from the website. What do you suggest?
Okay. In order to collect leads from the website, I propose leveraging web to lead, as I assume the number of leads that will be coming in is below the 500 leads per day limit, which would mean that this would fulfill the requirements and allow us to route it correctly. Last one I botched.
Yes,
the fourth one, I forgot what it was.
The fourth one was our alternatives.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And the fifth one is the justification. So, but in a real Q&A situation, what would you actually say? You don't have to read how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Lilith, for this question?
Yeah, for this question, I think it would be similar, but it would be, maybe more concise. So I would say to collect leads on the website, I propose to use Web2Leads. I'm assuming that we can stick within the 500 per day limit. And we don't need any attachments, so I think that should be sufficient. We don't need anything more complex.
Yeah, your answer was perfectly correct, no question there, but you wasted another 10 seconds.
Yeah.
If you state your assumption, I personally would recommend always state only the strongest one. The same as with justification. Again, here I'm open to feedback from the community. This is just something I made up. You know what I mean? This is nothing which I was reading, or I would say state one of them, the strongest one. Which one is the strongest assumption, the most important one?
With going for Web2Lead compared to others?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the biggest blocker for sure is the rate, so the limit that I'm mentioning. I think that's the biggest one. You could also argue, and I hear guys do jump in if you have, any other opinions, but I think attachments is also a good one, because
which one is more likely to happen?
I think the rate, that's the one that I usually cling to.
Yeah. So let's stick with that one. Let's try again. Lilith, we would like to collect leads from the website. What do you suggest?
In order to collect leads from the website, I propose using Web2Lead, as I assume we can stay within the 500 lead per day limit. I did consider alternatives such as form assembly, but I don't think that these are appropriate here.
Okay, very good for the first 4. The fifth one, my personal opinion, I'm not a CTA judge, I can't repeat that often enough.
We should have just a disclaimer at the bottom, right?
Yes, justifications always are based on business. As a CTO, I care about 2 things: making more money, spending less money. So I care about things like long-term cost of ownership, time to market, complexity to build. Why should you use a Web2Lead suggestion? What is the advantage over what is the advantage of something out of the box over something we buy?
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. I think I wasn't sure what justification I should choose, because I was confusing the 500 limit with justification, which it's not entirely. So yeah, okay, let me try again. Yeah.
Go ahead.
In order to collect leads from the website, I propose using Web2Lead, as I assume we will stay within the 500 lead per day limit. Oh crap, I forgot the 4th one.
Form assembly alternative.
Oh, I did consider form assembly, but I think this is not necessary in this situation. The reason why I think we should go with Web2Lead is it's an out-of-the-box capability, and we only need to make changes on the website form and not in that much into Salesforce.
Very good. Shorter in the end. What did you just say? In faster time to market.
Okay. It's a bit more vague, but they can always ask me if they want to know. Okay, so what is okay?
Exactly.
Good.
This is another thing. We practice this a lot. Again, give me your feedback in the chat, the people. This is again, we say as little as possible, but as much as needed, and we give the judges the offer to ask us questions. So, because judges might know that you know what time to market means in that, but they can ask you, but let them choose that. Don't preemptively try to read their minds. Okay.
No, I completely agree, because sometimes you actually open cans of worms that really should have stayed closed.
Yes. Because with the website, I actually would immediately jump in. Let's stay there. Oh, Lilith, do you see any risks by using Web2Lead regarding the website?
Well, we are reliant on the external team for the website, so we need to make sure that we have our timelines aligned there.
Yeah, perfect. Done. You mentioned the risk. You told me how to mitigate that.
Yeah, so I shouldn't keep digging for potential other risks, because if this isn't what they want, they will tell me for sure. So okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is true. You can't trust your own instinct, kind of, and the less you say, the more trustworthy you sound, kind of. What I do often when I do mock exams with people, I listen to when people start to ramble on. The same happens to me. When I do that when I'm nervous.
Oh yeah, yeah. Stopping, not talking too much is one of the biggest things I had to overcome preparing for the review board, because those who know me know that I tend to ramble on and on and on and on. So yeah.
Yeah, and once my mother had a Web to Lead project. I can't remember it, and it was such a mess. And
you can't imagine.
Yes. So yeah, let's try it one more time. Lilith, we would like to collect leads from the website. What do you recommend?
In order to collect leads from the website, I suggest using Web to Lead, as I believe we can stay within the 500 leads per day limit. I did consider form assembly as an alternative, but I think it's not necessary here in this case. One of the reasons to go for Web to Lead is that it will reduce the time to market.
Nice, since it's an out-of-the-box functionality.
Right. Yeah.
And a little bit to the fourth, I think is not a really strong word. You are an architect. You know that Web to Lead suffices the requirements. You don't think, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Those words, right? You're so used to using them because as a consultant, you always want to be careful. You don't want to make promises, but as an architect on the review board, you have to be sure. Okay.
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah. So no, could, would, it depends. Maybe I don't have enough information. Maybe.
Yeah. So maybe just for my sake, Steve, can you take like notes every time I say something like think, maybe, would, those, those kind of, can you, and then we can discuss them on Monday.
It's not possible. You said it too often. Sorry.
Oh, come on.
No, I will try for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's try it one more time to get the perfect sentence out of Lilith. Let's try. So Lilith, we'd like to collect leads from the website. What do you suggest?
In order to collect leads from the website, I propose we use Web to Lead. I assume we can stay within the 500 lead per day limit. I did consider form assembly, but I don't think it's necessary here. I will be using this out of the box capability as it will reduce the time to market.
Nice.
I did say think again, but I think it was an okay think in this case.
Absolutely. We are here talking on the last 5% and to the others one. Lilith already, it's, let's try again, just to make sure. One more time.
All right. Yeah. In order to collect leads from the website, I propose using Web to Lead. I believe we can stay within the 500 days per lead per day limit. I did consider form assembly, but I don't think it's necessary here. And using this out of the box capability will reduce the time to market. This think it's stronger than me.
In order to collect leads from the website, I recommend using Web to Lead since we are well within the limit of 500 leads per day. I considered form assembly as an alternative solution, but since Web to Lead will sufficiently solve the requirements, I stick with the out-of-the-box functionality of Web to Lead since it's a faster time to market. What I did is I repeated Web to Lead a couple of more times because one of the judges might just taking notes. Make it easy for them to follow you. So maybe repeat yourself one more time to many of the important words. Do you agree, Lilith? Or
I completely agree. And it's really funny. It's something that a lot of candidates and I have talked to each other if we've been there or if we've done a lot of mocks, is just that sometimes you write something down and then you're so convinced that you said it as well, but you not always do this. And I think, especially for me and a lot of others, I'm sure as well, is the integration patterns, for example. Yes. We always write them down because we have a little column for it. So we're sure that we put it there, but we don't always call it out. And you really need to, because and I think that's why you should judge at least one mock before you go for the review board, is then you know how difficult it is to follow, take notes, and still see everything that they wrote down, because you don't. And that's why you have to really be very verbal about everything, right?
I personally even assume that the judge is currently not looking at the screen. I just assume that. I explain everything. So we did this exercise in the past where people have to explain the data model to me without showing it. Which is, I have to be able to follow it kind of while I take notes, let's say. Okay. I brought you an exercise, which is Lilith. We would like to collect prospective customers on our website. Prospective customers should be shown a list of events, upcoming events on the website, and up on the registration of the events, we would like to collect the first name and the email address. What do you propose?
Okay, so sorry, I'm just going to make sure I understand it well, right? So we have a list of events and we have some prospective customers who can register for those events, right?
Correct.
Okay, so from
Just
a solution
here, the events are managed from within Salesforce.
Yeah, right. So I was assuming, but I didn't mention. So, okay, good. But we are also assuming that these people will likely not be in the system already, right?
You know the scenarios. Sometimes they're a little bit vague.
Yeah, that's true. So I have to make some assumptions. Okay. Okay, this is a long one to discuss in one go, but okay, fair enough. Let's try. I know I will have to do it 5 more times, but I'm ready. I'm ready. Okay, in order to show events on the website, as well as allow prospective customers to register for these events, I would need to make sure that there is an integration from the event calling Salesforce to show all of them on this public website. So that's the first one, which I will discuss later in my integration pattern. The next step would be then to allow them to have a form there to enter all the information. This I will then need to send back into Salesforce. To solve this requirement, I propose using Web2Lead in this case, where we will store the particular event ID on the lead so that we can later on in an after save trigger create a junction to this particular event. I did consider some other capabilities such as form assembly, but in this case, because we would need to get information from Salesforce anyway and need to have some customization on the website anyway, I do propose to stick to the standard out-of-the-box capabilities as much as possible, again, to reduce time to market.
Okay. Can you please now tell me all the integration patterns as well?
All right, yeah, I should have known. So the first integration that we will do from the website to Salesforce will be a remote calling process.
Start again with the requirements in order to.
Right, okay. In order to get the events from Salesforce to the website.
In order to display the events on the website.
Okay.
Look at it from a user point of view to make it easy for me to follow, because otherwise I wouldn't know why you want to.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, okay. So in order to display the events from Salesforce on our public website, I need to call from the website into Salesforce. This will happen via the remote call-in integration pattern. It will go via the ESB, which will then use the REST API to get these events from Salesforce. This will happen via JOT authentication, and will then send those events back, which we can then display on the website.
Okay. Please follow up with the second integration pattern.
All right. In order to send the lead information as well as the event registration from the website into Salesforce, I propose using a sorry, it's again a remote call-in, but in this case it's Web2Lead. Sorry, I got distracted. So let me restart. I got distracted whether by the solution. And that is actually, I think it's a good point to call out, because this sometimes happened to me in mocks as well. I don't know if it happened to you or other people here too, but sometimes you're reading your own solution again, you're thinking, should I really have done this? Is this the best way? And I think it's okay in coaching sessions to kind of maybe take it back, but in a presentation, you have to either on the fly, no, I will switch to this and be able to just go with it, but then be aware of the domino effect, or you stick to your guns and you just go with it. Fake the confidence until you make it.
And today I had this exactly with one of my students, and we decided together that 99, because most of you have 10, 15 years of experience, you can almost trust your instinct a little bit. Make a decision and stick with it. Don't go back and forth. make a decision and stick with it, and either change it, then you stick with the other one, but you stick with the decision, because you otherwise waste a lot of mental energy on, should I really do that?
Yeah, and so I was talking about the presentation, but it's very valid point. It's also very applicable to the preparation that you're doing, because in the mock that you released today, you know, the one that we did, it was the last one before my first review board. I had the same issue, and I told you guys, like, I just don't know. I just keep going back and forth on the data model and waste so much time on that. And you guys gave me the exact same feedback, and it helps. You know, will it be the optimal solution? It could be that sometimes your gut isn't there entirely, so you might make the wrong one. But in the end, it's okay, because you always have the Q&A. And I don't know how you look at it, but for me, I really look at the Q&A as an opportunity to rectify the wrongs that you made in your presentation or your solution. I might be naive. I know I am, so that's okay. But I really believe that the judges are there to support you. So if you made a mistake or something doesn't really add up, they will tell you, and you can still correct it.
Yeah. Coming back to our integration, let's try again the integration in order to collect leads from the web, as to collect the leads, the event registrations. Yeah,
send those back. Okay, good. In order to send the leads as well as the event registration back to Salesforce from the website, I propose using again remote call-in pattern. Only this time we will be using actually the out-of-the-box web to lead capabilities, where we will have a specific field on the lead to capture the event ID. This will then be created in Salesforce using the standard web to lead capabilities. So it's a form action. In Salesforce, we will then be creating a junction to the event in an after save flow on the lead. Perfect. Nice. Really nice. A little detail to can you repeat the first half again? The first part, the display events. Oh, yeah. Okay. So the display events. In order to display events on the website from Salesforce, I propose using a remote call-in from the website to Salesforce using the or via the ESB. The ESB will perform a REST API call-in using JOT authentication. Yeah. Say the full word. What do you say? Well, call into the REST API using JOT authentication. Is this what you or? Remote call-in via request and reply via the REST API. Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, gosh, I'm going to write this one down. So I always forget, because remote call-in, if you look at kind of the integration pattern document, it doesn't really state the request and reply, but actually it's a very good point, because you can do different types of remote call-in. It can be sync, it can be async. Yeah, okay. All righty. And I would skip the JWT bearer token flow here. You already talked about it on the system landscape. You don't always have to mention the authorization flow, because we're focused on the topic. Okay, but this is just what I think. No, but I would love to skip it. So any excuse is good. No, so indeed, if I mentioned it before, it's true. There's some things that are good to repeat, and others that just become tedious. Okay. Good. So just taking some notes. So okay. To the group again with the integration patterns. I think there's no way around of just it's not too many different variants of it. Just repeat them again and again and again, and I like write them out and say it word for word. Don't be smart about it. Just say the whole sentence end to end. And you basically replace the first and the last word, and everything in between is the same. Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that so it hasn't been covered in this Q&A already, but one of the things that you really hammered into me, and I think it's very good because it's really, really true, is kind of defending why you chose this pattern, especially when you're going for remote process invocation, request and reply versus fire and forget, really explaining that, okay, there's no one waiting for the system to return a response. So why would we do it synchronous? This is why I go for an async approach. You know, don't ask this question to the judges, but that's the gist, right? Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Hey guys.
Hello, Sam.
Sorry. Hello. Hello again. Sorry, I just wanted to add something to that. I think you're right. At the beginning and the end tend to change. The format in the middle is pretty much the same. And it's good to establish a consistency as well, because once you've once you've said it like 2 or 3 times, the judges are familiar with the format that you're sort of describing it in. So it makes it easier for them to recognize that's the integration point, with the next integration and the next integration and the next integration. So it just becomes more of a conditioned detection for the judges. The other thing the main thing I wanted to say was that whilst the format is the same, and is good to be the same, don't forget about explaining what the integration itself is actually doing. If there's an orchestration that's going on, because that tends to come up in Q&A. So if you've just said that it's going through the ESB and it's then going to connect to Salesforce via the REST API. If there's more than one call going on, don't forget to explain that there's more than one call and what that logic or what the reason for that orchestration is. Tends to be where you've got multiple systems that you're connecting to, but it can be that you're a good example is where you've triggered an event and you have to make a call back into Salesforce to retrieve more data. Explain why you need to do that. And it tends to be because you've got limits that you're trying to navigate through in the actual event that's being published, at the very beginning. But then you may then need to call out to the target system and then call back into Salesforce again. So that whole dance, and the orchestration, you must explain. Otherwise, it will come up in Q&A and you may burn time.
And to follow up there, I 100% agree, Fam. Thanks. Also mention what information is the call actually transporting. So to follow up with the example, Lilith, we would like to trigger the invoice creation in our ERP system up on closed won opportunities. What do you suggest?
In order to trigger invoice creation upon closed won opportunities in Salesforce in the ERP, we want to, I propose using a platform event that will be fired via a record trigger flow.
What pattern?
Yeah.
Always start with the big one. Sam, do you agree? So I like to start with like set the stage, remote processing location, and then become more and more detailed down the line. At least this made it easier for me. First of all, how do you actually trigger that?
Yeah, again, that was something while saying it, I was like, oh gosh, and I was just explaining right before we started, this is always something I forget. So yeah, case in point, right? Okay. In order to create an invoice in the ERP, once the case opportunity becomes closed won in Salesforce, I propose using the remote process invocation request and reply, as it's an asynchronous call request, which
what's
I think
the trigger? What's the trigger?
Okay, yeah, no, you're right. So again, but then if I say the trigger,
you follow the system landscape, basically.
But in this case, I'm just wondering if I saying I'm creating a platform event before I've decided.
I guess the question is, but how are you creating that platform event, right? So it's,
yeah, for sure.
I am going to use X to perform a remote procedure invocation using a platform event that will then blah blah blah. Yeah.
Follow the system landscape.
Okay.
Basically, visualize a little dot which flows around.
Yeah. Okay. So again, okay. In order to create an invoice in the ERP once an opportunity reaches closed won in Salesforce, I would have a record trigger flow and opportunity, which would create a platform event. So this would use the remote process invocation fire and forget pattern, which is async, which I think covers the necessity here, as there is no user waiting actively on the response. This platform event would be subscribed to by the ESB, which would have a committee client listening to this. The ESB would then receive the platform event and would subsequently call the REST API in Salesforce to get the opportunity as well as the line items, which would be needed to actually create the corresponding invoice and invoice line items in the ERP, which it would then send it to. Once it's created there, it would again get the invoice number from the ERP and use the REST API again to update this on the opportunity record in Salesforce.
Sam, what do you think?
Couple of details missing, I think.
Oh,
But yeah,
okay.
it's about 90% there, I think.
So which details should I include?
So I wanted to hear streaming API on the, you mentioned Comet D. I wanted to know what was the nature of the call to the ERP? Was that it's going to be a request and reply pattern, right? Because you want to get the invoice number back when it's created. And is that a REST API? I mean, that, or is it a SOAP API? That can be a constraint in terms of performance. And then the call back into the platform, that's going to be via the REST API.
Yeah.
In a remote call in.
It's a second one, actually. I should split it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would even add one more detail. You all know, so to the group again, I think the integration patterns is the one area where you have to add the most details because it's probably the most crucial part of the whole system, of the whole architecture. I would add that the platform event contains only the opportunity ID. Make sure you understand the concept of or a common external ID, whatever you chose. I personally use external IDs instead of record IDs of Salesforce. This is my personal flavor on it.
Mm-hmm.
But Sam, do you usually?
No, agree.
We have to disagree at some point.
So maybe
we have differences of opinion, not disagreement.
No, a different actually. I'm with Sam that if you mention the Comet D, then you have to see the streaming API. If you don't mention it, then you would. I personally wouldn't mention it. Maybe once. I don't know about Sam.
Yeah, so that you at least then you've sort of exemplified that you understand there's a correlation between the streaming API and it needing a Comet D client and so on. I mean, you can go even further and talk about the BAO protocol and stuff like that, but
no, don't please. I don't.
that's that kind of worms that we're cautious
it is
with.
a little bit, yeah.
Okay, so Lilith, try one more time. This is
So I think we had another comment from someone, or no?
No. Okay, can we?
I have a question here. So when you said you prefer external IDs, in that case, you're assuming that the opportunity or whatever you're trying to trigger is present in the external system and stamped back into Salesforce.
No, instead, when I make the call out to the ERP, to the ESB has to make a call back to Salesforce and the ERP. So instead of using the Salesforce ID in the platform event, I use an external ID, which I created on the opportunity, send that to the ESB. The ESB subsequently makes a call back into Salesforce using the external ID to get the related information, sends over the related information back to the ERP system via request and reply pattern. Since it still has the external ID, it can then wait for the invoice ID and write back the invoice ID into Salesforce onto the opportunity using this external ID. So I personally, does this make sense?
Yeah. I mean, you already answered my second question around the mechanism that how you're going to, there should be one more integration, which will say, okay, remote call in and update the opportunity that invoice has been generated. Yeah,
absolutely.
Makes sense.
Does this make sense what I just said, Sam? Because I'm kind of winging it. I'm not too good with integrations. It's not my strong suit. I'm better with page layouts.
Yes. Sorry, I was on mute and I was chatting away.
I mean, yeah. Okay. I have a fun knowledge I learned today that you cannot have a quick action to create campaign member records. You have to use on the contact. You have to use the related list custom button add campaign member.
Mhm.
Yeah. Weird knowledge, but I think every CTA should know that. Okay, Lilith, one more time. We would like to trigger invoice creation in the ERP system up on a closed one opportunity. What do you suggest?
In order to create an invoice in the ERP upon opportunity closed one in Salesforce, I propose using a record triggered flow to create a platform event, which would then use the remote process invocation fire and forget pattern, which is async, which I think would be okay here, as there's nobody really waiting on response into Salesforce. This platform event would then be sent to the ESB who is subscribed to this. The ESB would then, in this platform event, get the ID of the opportunity which was changed and use this ID to call back into Salesforce using the standard REST API to get the opportunity as well as the opportunity line items. This would then be used in a synchronous request and reply format call to the ERP system to create the invoice there. And in the response, we would get back the invoice number, which we would then via a remote call into Salesforce, again, via the REST API by the ESB, we would update this invoice number back onto the opportunity.
Nice.
Wow, I really hope I covered everything. I was looking at my notes.
I actually would say no. Again, more details. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm trying not to be hard on you, but yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. You can definitely say I did drop. For sure, you noticed I did drop the comma D in the streaming because I figured either I mentioned already or I'll open that can of worms later.
But that, I mean, it should be like evident why this needs practice, right? Because there's a lot of information that you've got to still fit within a reasonable time frame.
Yeah.
So you can still keep pace. Yeah, the fewer joining words and and things like that, the better. And sometimes that means analyzing the way you structure sentences to move things around so that you can say more things in one shorter piece. Yeah, so
I completely agree. I think, and this is also something that I know is something that you, Johan, really coach people into, is just practicing that way of phrasing stuff. So for sure that would be super helpful for me to just make it quicker and quicker and quicker, so that I don't hesitate as much when I'm talking. I know, okay, so I'm mentioning fire and forget, which means I need to mention it this, and I already have this phrase in my mind, so I don't have to think about it on the spot and look for the words, because we're not native, which means I need to look a bit longer for my words. So yeah, good tip, thank you.
What I would like to add as details is that when you make the first call in from the ESP to get additional information, we do not only get opportunity and opportunity line items, we also get customer information, especially the unique identifier between the systems, because the ERP systems has to know who this invoice belongs to, unless the ERP system is just a microservice to create dummy invoices, which is unlikely.
No.
So you need. So this is what Sam means. This is where you actually could drop a little bit the word of orchestration, kind of. It's not really an orchestration, but kind of orchestration. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it absolutely is orchestration, personally. There you go.
Yeah. So always say the cool word, a common identifier. Think about think about what's the common identifier between the two systems. There has to be one, always.
Yeah,
okay.
For sure. And one thing that you now pointed out that I'm now wondering about should I actually have 3 integrations that I go over? Because actually there are 3, right? So I have the first action, which is the fire and forget. Then I have my first remote call-in, as you mentioned, to get the additional results. Then there's the next part where the ESB does stuff with that. And then there's the additional remote call-in to actually update again the opportunity. So it's 3, right? That I should, or you?
This, personal opinion, this is something where you really show that you can think in complex scenarios and can make them. Yes, in your head you can break them up, but you have to make it as one flow because it's one business flow.
Oh yeah, for sure it's one flow. But I mean, if you know, I'm always creating my artifact with the different integrations, and I think there, if you can break it up and maybe say like continuation in the next integration pattern or next integration number that you have there, I think I should break it up. I don't know if the audience has any other opinions.
I think what you'll find is that your list of integrations will explode, and it may become a bit more difficult to navigate around. Whereas reading, one row, but knowing that there's complexity that you cannot miss out, as part of that one flow, not only makes it easier for the judges to sort of understand that it's just a very complex flow, but also one of the things that I found in my artifacts is early on, and it sort of went past halfway of my journey at least, was that I was trying to put too much in my artifacts rather than putting prompts in my artifacts, if that makes sense.
When I can follow up on the prompt here, whenever I know it's not that it's actually 2 integration, with what it's not 3 integrations, it's 1 integration, it just has 3 steps. But as soon as I know I create something from Salesforce in the ERP via fire and forget pattern, I know this is the 3 steps. It's 1 integration, which had, don't basically just, so what I would take as notes, I didn't even have the integration pattern slide, so I would just write trigger, RPI, RR, or FE, ESB, ERP.
In your annotations, you mean?
Yeah.
In the same. So if anyone was looking at your annotations, they would think, oh my gosh, what is this gobbledygook? Like there's just letters and everything everywhere. I don't understand what it means, but what it means, and it makes sure that you've got like a shorthand notation that you will not forget pieces by doing that.
But you have to, there's no cheating out in remembering this complex flows by heart.
No, for sure. But what I think, or my approach to my artifacts is always, I want to make sure that I have not too much so that I don't get distracted in how, a wall of text or whatever that I put there, but that I still have enough that if maybe the judges got distracted for a moment and they don't quite know what are we talking about, they can look at my slide and catch up immediately, because that's how I as a judge like to, follow.
And that's the trade-off. You're like, exactly how you described it there was right. Is that if you break out the integrations, when you then try and describe the integration, you'll be faced with 4 rows and sort of like you say, a wall of information that is difficult for you to quickly run through. You see what I mean?
Of course,
so if it means using some notation in the complex parts in a single row, I think that's probably the a good compromise.
I think I have a good idea on how I would like to visualize it now. So it will be 1 integration, but maybe I'll have a bit of structure to indicate that those are remote call-ins after this fire and forget.
Makes sense.
I would like to add more and more detail to our requirement.
Oof, okay.
The shipping costs are actually calculated in a shipping cost service.
Okay. So we need to call that service before we call the ERP, because the ERP will create the invoice. So they need all the correct numbers.
Yes, correct.
Okay, fair enough.
What's your assumption? Let's start first. What's your assumption? Do we need this shipping cost in Salesforce or not?
Yeah, my assumption is that we likely need it to be in a separate system because it can be very complex to calculate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we will rely.
Should we store the outcome? Should it be visible to our users?
I don't think so, because we will get the invoice from the ERP, and in the end, that's what we want to give as one big whole to our users. So likely we'll bring that in some flavor already. So I wouldn't store those particularly back into Salesforce. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's the correct assumption.
No, I'm open to both. What I just wanted to make sure with the group is there is always assumptions behind every decision we make. Since I personally would have made a different assumption, but yours is not wrong. It's just so. Yeah. Be mindful of assumptions and choose the one which makes your life easier.
Well, the one where I don't have to go back and update Salesforce is what I would like.
Okay, so let's try now again with this complex orchestration.
Okay, all right. In order to create an invoice in the ERP system once our opportunity reaches close one, I will use a record trigger flow to create a platform event. This would use then the remote process invocation fire and forget pattern. The ESB is subscribed to this platform event, which contains the ID of our opportunity, and would then use this ID in a subsequent call into Salesforce in the REST via the REST API. So this is a remote call-in that we would do. There it would get information from both the account, from opportunity, as well as the opportunity line items. So there would be some orchestration to get all these different, likely would be multiple calls that it's actually doing. And then after—
You open the can of worms.
I opened a can of worms. Okay. Shall I just continue from this part or restart?
Yeah, continue for it, but with this, it's likely more call-ins. Actually not. You can either make a composite call, as you can, you can call from the account. True. You can call up. You know what I mean? There's.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of options there. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the next step would then be, after we get this information from from Salesforce about the customer, the opportunity, and the line items, we then have to use the orchestration within the ESB to first call the shipping service to get the actual shipping cost. So this would be a request and reply pattern that we would do there. Once we have the shipping costs, we need to call the ERP to actually create this invoice. This would again use the request and reply pattern, and it would send us back the invoice number. This invoice number would then again be sent into Salesforce to update the opportunity. This would again use the remote call-in pattern, where the ESB would call the standard REST API to update the opportunity using again the ID, the common identifier that we got at the beginning in our platform event.
Thank you. I would just drop for bonus points the word orchestration at some point randomly.
I think I tried with like the multiple REST API calls, but I think it was the wrong place to drop it.
Yeah, I heard the word.
We should have like a bingo, actually. I'm now suspecting that might actually be what the judges in the CTA panel have. They just have a big bingo sheet and they just like stamp everything you use.
Okay. I don't think so. Hopefully, I'm not sure, but I'm not a judge. At least my judges, they really listened to what I said and then made my life, they wanted to know details. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. They asked very direct questions on the words that I use rather than just general explain, change it, a capture.
No, yes.
No.
Okay. And Lilith, you have to do it one more time.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So in order to create an invoice in the ERP system, once our opportunity reaches the close one stage, I propose using a record trigger flow on the opportunity to fire a platform event. This would then use the remote process invocation request and fire and forget pattern So this would create a platform event which has our ID for our opportunity to which the ESB is subscribed. So the ESB would then use this ID to call back into Salesforce using the remote call-in and the standard REST API to get the information about both account, opportunity, and opportunity line items. Next, the orchestration on the ESB will kick in to actually first, I know, right? To actually first call the shipping services and there get the shipping costs. These will then be sent together with the information from Salesforce to the ERP in a request and reply pattern. So in the response, we will get back the actual invoice number that was created in that transaction. And we would then use this as well as the ID that we got, the common identifier that we got in the initial platform event to do another remote call-in into Salesforce in the REST API to update the opportunity with this invoice number. I need to drink something now.
Sam, what do you think?
Okay.
Miles better than the original. Yeah, I'd be happy with that. I mean, there were a couple of stumbling points, but I think you know what those were.
I'm 100% with you. If you can keep that level for every single answer, I think the stumbling points kind of weigh each other out. Like the judges know, okay, you know your stuff. So what? Before we wrap up, I have another call in a couple of minutes. Thanks all for dropping by. Maybe to quickly summarize, Lilith already knows all the topics. It's not only to know the topic, but also actually to know how to communicate them. This is what I found being a CTA coach now for the last couple of months, actually the harder part. And Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it just comes from practice, right?
And now I would open to the group. Is Lily still here? I think we lost Lily, but maybe Jonida. Hey, any feedback or thoughts? You're muted, or we cannot hear you, Jonida.
It was amazing. She was so well structured, and also the feedback of you guys. So if this is going to be like doing the Flow Republic training, yeah, that will be very interesting.
Yeah, we have different types of training in Flow Republic. This is one part of it. Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
No, it's really interesting. So it's a good, yeah, really good thing to do. But yeah, first you need to know your solution. And I think I would think a lot more than Lilith about the solution. Like I would need like 5 minutes just to think, okay, how I'm going to do that. So I think this is also something that you really need to practice.
Absolutely right. This is, I found from my experience that most people are pretty quick in actually understanding the technical part, because most of you have enough experience. I mean, you have built this kind of, we built this kind of integration together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but not within an environment with, I don't know, an ESP and a real ESP. Like it was like a,
Perfect.
Let's try to make an ESP.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody else? Any feedback or thoughts?
Actually, one thought, my team lead, he was also there like a couple of minutes ago, and he said, oh, he would have suggested like Pardot and community. And I thought, yeah, that's actually where the consultant kind of comes from, because he wants to sell as well Pardot and community. But I would fear actually having like the judges say, okay, tell me more about Pardot and community. How would you do it? So it's going really into much complexity. So you always also need to think, what is the easiest solution where I do not need to explain so much stuff? So it's just like, yeah, Web to Lead was a good thing to do.
It's kind of funny that Web to Lead is often good enough. I mean, how many B2B companies do we have out there who actually have more than 500 leads per day?
You've got to be quite a large company to be, or prolific products to be able to do that in a B2B scenario.
Yeah, or you're a marketing kind of company like we had at Audibene, then you don't have this, but
So why, coming back, this is a good point. Why not community and Pardot? We reuse instead of rebuild as much as possible, unless needed otherwise. Is this
But also you would need to explain, like, I think 10 minutes longer.
It would be the same sentence, kind of. You would still, in order to collect leads, leads up on our marketing campaign, I recommend landing pages on Pardot. And then maybe the judge, or Sam, what would you say?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. You don't have to go into a lot of detail. Give the judges the opportunity to ask for more detail. Obviously you need to go into as much detail in order to justify your choice. That is, just enough information to justify. Okay, if you include too much, you may end up burning time. In the Q&A, they may then ask you for more information. Okay, but if it's not clear why you've chosen something, likely you will get more questions in the Q&A.
And with Pardot, I would have fun. I would ask so many follow-up questions around it.
Yes, exactly.
And also because I'm not an expert, I would be actually curious. I would be a horrible judge. I would always ask questions about topics I don't know. Okay. It's 4:30. Thanks all for dropping by. Just a quick question to the group here. Should we do something like this on a regular basis? It was the first time we did it.
On my part, I love it.
I love it as well.
Yeah, me too.
It's great.
Yeah. Great, a lot of insights. Yeah.
Okay.
Even I loved it, and I was beginning.
You did great, Lilith. You did really great.
Well, I can say I survived, so that's good, right?
No, you really did great. You did not only survive. I would be really glad if it would be like this for me.
My laptop didn't, though. It crashed halfway through, so I'm really sorry, guys. Well, halfway. I made it near the end, so it's good enough, I guess.
Okay, I have to drop now. Thanks all for coming by. You can stay in the call, but I will leave now. And anyways, have a good time and have a nice weekend. See you.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.